Hi again guys, and welcome to another installment of the Automotive News Roundup on the channel. For those who haven't clicked on one of these episodes before, we don't just talk about leaks and news when it comes to Gran Turismo and Forza, but also news in the supercar or hypercar world as well. We talked about the Gambala, the McLaren fan car, the T50 that is, the Ultima RS even, and now a new Koenigsegg, but of course many of you have seen this, so why are we talking about it here? Well, because, as you saw from the title and the thumb, it is confirmed for Goodwood, coming up this weekend. And I'm hoping, of course, to get some footage of the car. I don't expect it will actually run up the hill. I think it's probably just going to stay on the Michelin stand at the supercar paddock. But either way, it will be cool to see it in person. And that is, of course, the Koenigsegg Jesko. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with why the car is significant, Koenigsegg in recent years have gone from strength to strength, not just when it comes to performance, because they had that right from the start, but when it comes to innovation. And that's why they will always have my respect. Innovating as well as they do in a street car will always be more impressive to me than innovation in a race car, because in a race car there's just more of an opportunity to use it. Whereas on the street, the rules are so strict, emissions, safety, all that kind of stuff, that it's a very constrained box to work in effect. Now, the Jesko has a lot of new stuff compared to previous ones. It's not just a combination of one-to-one and Regera, which is kind of what it looks like. It's interestingly named after Christian von Koenigsegg's father, Jesko, and it uses a ton of new tech. Completely redesigned aero, it is more aerodynamic, produces a ton of downforce, 1,000 kilos in other words, and the engine, which is a 5-litre twin-turbo V8, is set to be, I believe, the most powerful one they've ever put out, especially when it comes to just the pure engine power, because if I recall correctly, I think the Regera put out like 1,600 horsepower, but of course it was a hybrid. This puts out 1,600 just from the engine, and that's running on E85 biofuel. Now, interestingly, you can also run it on regular pump gas, which is about 1,280 horsepower, but of course, why wouldn't you run it on E85 if you can put out 1,600 horses and 1,500 newton meters of torque? Now, it has a 9-speed gearbox, ultra-close gear ratios, or not ratios, I should say, ultra-close gear change times, to the point where it almost feels like a CVT, where it's got seamless acceleration. It's actually the second custom-built in-house gearbox from Koenigsegg, after that amazing transmission that we saw in the Regera. I was interested and curious why they didn't go with that again, because it didn't seem to have any drawbacks. But I guess they're trying to make it new, innovate again, don't look back kind of thing, which I like, and at least it makes the Regera that much more unique. And also kind of the birth of that gearbox for Koenigsegg. But it's not just that. One of the things I love about the Jesko is it has all-wheel steering. And although tons of cars, and especially stuff like plant hire heavy machinery, has used all-wheel steering for years, you don't see it anywhere near as much as I would argue you should in the high-performance world, especially the supercar and hypercar world. Because if you think about it, if you look up videos on YouTube of supercars driving on city streets, London for instance, what do you always see? You see guys who can afford the car, but then they can't even get it out of a parking space properly. They can't turn down a tight city street. They struggle in traffic because the cars are so wide, the steering is so shallow, especially if you have an old school mechanical gear, or not gear system, a mechanical steering system with a rack and pinion, because it's so shallow, like a Formula car. In effect, you've got like 180 degrees from lock to lock on the steering wheel, and although that feels good on a track, it's useless on the road. The Caparo T1, for instance, has a 95-foot turning circle. It's ridiculous. You can't use that on the street. But the Koenigsegg is using that all-wheel steering system. Now, to clarify, for those who are unfamiliar with all-wheel steering, it means that the rear wheels also steer. But this car uses two different forms, because there are two major forms of all-wheel steering. One is in conjunction with the front wheels, and one is in opposition to them. And basically the difference means that at low speeds, when you turn left with the steering wheel, of course the front wheels turn left. But at those low speeds, the rear wheels actually turn right instead, up to 3 degrees of movement left or right, which doesn't sound like much, but that makes a big difference to the handling and the steering of the car. And what that means is because the rear wheels turn the opposite direction, it gives you a significantly better turning circle, which is fantastic for city streets, makes it that much more practical, but also far better on tight corners on a track, such as hairpin bends, every corner on Monaco, for instance, the Nürburgring. It's better in every way for those low-speed corners. However, it then changes at higher speeds, and this is the method that you'll often see on, for instance, some premium luxury cars. Some Japanese stuff, especially from like the 90s, you would see the in conjunction method. And this is really useful for motorway driving, or highway driving, as they call it in the States, and that is that the rear wheels turn in conjunction with the front. So for instance, you want to change lanes on the highway, so you turn right, and usually the front wheels would turn right. With this system, though, the rear wheels also turn right a little bit. So it in effect gives you crab steering. So it allows you to flow more smoothly from lane to lane at high speeds, and it also makes the car more stable, because instead of, in effect, trying to turn the car at high speeds, you're not so much turning it and more shifting it from left to right, where the whole body still stays relatively straight, and it's just the wheels that turn, which actually increases stability a lot. So it's more practical, and it's safer, and it's more stable. It's a fantastic system. I do not understand why more supercars and hypercars don't use it, especially stuff like Bugatti with the Chiron. It seems like kind of a no-brainer. I'm sure there are some that I'm just not aware of that do use it, but Koenigsegg certainly is featuring at the forefront of the Jesko. So that's just a couple of things that you may not have known about the Jesko, why it's actually a very cool car. Personally, I don't love the design. I find it a little bit too simple. And although I do love simple, smooth lines, as I said before, my favourite Koenigsegg is still the original, the CC8S. But to me, this one's, it's a little bit too forgettable compared to some others. It's just a very smooth, flat, kind of detailless shape. Very small headlights, not really any kind of grille to look at. I don't know, it's just not as pretty as the Regera to me, certainly not as pretty as something like a CCX or a CC8S, but again, it's their new design style, so that's the way it is for now. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one at Goodwood. As I said, I will try and grab some footage of the car, and certainly going to be interesting to see what the big three in the hypercar category try to achieve, because there are tons of people who say, well, the top speed battle doesn't matter anymore. Well, tell that to Hennessy, Koenigsegg, SSC, and Bugatti, because they sure still seem to think that it does. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they compare, especially the big three. Bugatti's okay, but the Chiron's already fallen behind. And the one that I'm actually looking forward to the most, which, who knows, it may be at Goodwood as well, it's been doing the rounds, is the Tuatara, the SSC Tuatara, which has even more power than this, 1,750 horses. I'm really looking forward to that one. But overall, that's it for the rundown of what you need to know about the Jesko, and that it's going to be at Goodwood. But that's it for this vid. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.